Why pay regular price when you can save money on every purchase with WagerBucks at both WagerTalk and Sports Memo? WagerBucks are now eligible for use on not just daily, 3-day, and 7-day passes, but all long-term and seasonal packages up to 1 full year. There are tons of options available for every budget and size of better, from as low as $90 gets $100, all the way up to $3,500 gets you $5,000. Save every day on every pick you buy with WagerBucks.
Welcome into college football today, best damn college football show edition. I am your host, Drew Martin, joined by Steve Merril and Rob Veno of WagerTalk.com. We're talking 4 games on the college football docket. First up here, Steve Merril. Steve, welcome to the show, buddy. How you feeling?
Hey, Drew, great to be here. We talked a little college football earlier today on Wednesday afternoon. We got things started with the first quarter of the schedule on the every game on the board. That's on Twitter right now, on your Twitter page and mine, at Steve Merril, 2 R's, 1 L. And I think going forward, I'm going to be on the Friday football show each week. But I said before, so I got to get on the best damn college football show. And that's Wednesday, of course, because it's you and Rob Veno. So happy to be here today, to say the least.
Absolutely. That's just the title of the show. They're good each and every day, Monday through Friday, right here on the Wager Talk YouTube channel, 4 o'clock Eastern time. So thanks for joining us live. And if you're watching on replay, guys, that works as well. Feel free to drop a comment below what you're looking to bet. Hey, where you agree with us and where you disagree. Also, Robbie Veno on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports, Wager Talk. What's up, buddy? Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Drew. And not to be outdone by my esteemed colleague, Mr. Merril over here, you and I also did a portion of every game on the board wrapped up. However, I don't believe that one's on our Twitter page yet because we did the final segment of that particular show. But be on the lookout for it. We covered, I think, 385 to the finish. If you're looking for the very end of the rotation, that was our spot. You can find that. Drew will have that up quickly, I'm sure. And you can get analysis on every game on the board.
Absolutely. That's a plug there for EGOTB, but we got 4 games. We're going in depth here, guys, on the best damn college football show. SEC matchup here, Steve. We're getting the battle of the felines as we get LSU Tigers and Kentucky Wildcats, 7:30 Eastern on SEC Network. 50 being the total in Lexington. Right now, looking at the Wager Talk odds screen, we're seeing -3 or -3 in the hook. So a good one to shop around, guys. That's Kentucky at home. The Wildcats have been taking some money here, Steve. I believe they opened -1.5. Now we're seeing as high as -3.5. You liking anything here? Tigers and Wildcats Saturday night.
I'm definitely liking that graphic. That might be the best damn college football graphic you're going to see all week, right there, crashing down to earth. Drew Martin just hit under his desk. You all couldn't see that. But, yeah, this line's sitting pretty much around 3.5 right now. Obviously, we know how critical 3 is. I actually played LSU last week as a 3-point favorite against Auburn, 16-10 in the third quarter there. I was feeling pretty good about the play. A fluky 4th down play really made the difference there. And Auburn, who we'll talk about a little bit later here on the show, the big game against Georgia, did sneak out with the win, but I still like this LSU team. I actually make them a slight favorite. My power ratings actually favor them to win this game outright. So I disagree with that line moving higher, Drew. Understand why. Kentucky, a perfect 5-0 straight up. They've covered 4 of those 5 games. You know, this LSU team, national champs 2 years ago, obviously got hit hard last year, lost a lot of key players, including the number 1 draft pick and quarterback Burrow was gone. But they played better down the stretch. You remember that big upset against the Gators to finish out the regular season. They did lose to a good UCLA team. You know, no shame in that out of the gate. Pretty weak schedule since, but I really thought they could beat Auburn last week. Probably should have beaten Auburn last week, which would have been 4 straight wins. A little bit underrated now, and we'll play LSU in this one, getting points.
Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, this is a whole different price tag here for Kentucky, Robbie. I think it's Teddy Covers quoted it as the first time Kentucky is favored over LSU this century, speaking to that big win over Florida just this this past weekend. I mean, LSU, I don't think this is a very good LSU team, Robbie. I really don't. But just in this spot after that huge win in Lexington this past Saturday and now facing a pretty solid LSU team, I don't know if I can lay 3. I definitely can't lay 3.5 with Kentucky. What are you thinking in this matchup?
Well, I'm thinking I'm probably under the desk right next to you after our producer, Robert Harris, let go of that explosion. That thing scared me. I'm with Steve power ratings wise because my numbers showed LSU small favorite -1.5. So we don't bet just on the power rating numbers, but it certainly gives you something to be grounded with and, handicap out from there. LSU defense has been bad, guys, last couple of weeks. 486 yards allowed to Mississippi State, 453 yards allowed to Auburn. And the culprit has been the pass defense, and the big reason Derek Stingley hasn't played in 2 weeks. Whether or not he plays in this game, Stingley, regarded by some as the best cover corner in the country, certainly hurts LSU when he's not on the field. But I don't know that Kentucky, with Will Levis at quarterback, and they were supposed to infuse some type of explosiveness into their passing game this year. If they have, I haven't seen it yet. They're still a bad passing football team, so they may not be able to capitalize on LSU's main defensive weakness here. We'll see. Situationally, Drew, I agree with you wholeheartedly. You play Florida last week. It's a divisional game, SEC East, and you win. So that's big towards tiebreakers. This is East versus West, not quite as big. And can they pull things off 2 weeks in a row? That's where head coach Stoops comes in as a motivator. LSU has led after 3 quarters the last 2 weeks, 19-10 against Auburn last week. Steve mentioned it. They wind up losing 24-19. They were ahead 21-10 the prior week against Mississippi State and almost blew that one. Mississippi State came from behind with their passing game. The Kentucky pass defense, because let's face it, LSU's one-dimensional this year, right? They can't run the football. Everything goes through that passing game. Max Johnson, Butte at wide receiver. And Kentucky, they haven't played a whole host of really good throwing teams, but the teams that can throw it have hurt Kentucky a little bit. 294 passing yards by Missouri, 211 by Florida with 75% completions in a loss last week. There's a little more balance to those two teams, though. Mizzou can run it with Tyler Beatty. Obviously, Florida runs it as well. LSU's kind of just one-dimensional. I don't know if they'll be able to throw it as well here against Kentucky. The good news for LSU is that Kentucky doesn't pressure the quarterback. 164 pass attempts against them, only 9 sacks. Johnson should have some time to throw the football here. But what's bad and probably the worst matchup on the field here, guys, is this LSU run defense, which has been steamrolled on more than one occasion. UCLA gets 210 against them, pushes them around. Mississippi State, which doesn't run the football at all, averaged 4.4 a carry. And then Auburn last week, 163, 5.6 a carry. It's a little bit scary against UK, but the situation bothers me here. I really think LSU can get this one in a bounce-back effort, especially if Stingley makes his way back to the field. I'll probably check the injury report continually this week to see if he does. I think it makes a little bit of a difference. I don't know. Over seems to be the right play to me, guys. I think LSU can find yardage in the passing game, and I think Kentucky can find yardage in their running game. Both of those aspects attack weaknesses for the other team, and the number's kind of small here at 50, so I think I'll try over that number.
All right, liking the over, LSU and Kentucky. Guys, we got a couple rivalry games on the slate. First one up here in the Big 12. This is kicking us off on Saturday, 12 noon Eastern, Oklahoma, Texas. That's what I was waiting for there. We got -3.5, the Sooners as the neutral favorite here, 63.5 being the total. Robbie, coming to you first in this one. This one's kicking us off. The Red River Rivalry, to be correct in the what we're calling this one. But overall, Oklahoma, Texas, man, what do you like in Sooners and Longhorns?
I feel like Robert should be giving us a red warning light before he does that, so at least I'm ready for it. Catches me off guard every time. This is going to be Steve Sarkisian's biggest game to date. It's only the first year of his tenure, but you have to beat Oklahoma if you're the head coach at Texas. So huge game for Sarkisian. Two really good play callers going head-to-head here against one another. Lincoln Riley on one side, Steve Sarkisian on the other. Your fundamental difference, the most significant one in this game, is going to be the two run defenses. Oklahoma's been very, very good at defending the run, and Texas has been run heavy for the most part. I mean, when Casey Thompson has been asked to throw, if you go back to the Texas Tech game, they threw it really well. But when you're running for as much yardage per carry as they were in that one, it's kind of easy to throw. Oklahoma's been good against the run. Now, last week, Skylar Thompson came back at quarterback for K-State, and they put up over 400 yards against Oklahoma, but a majority of that through the air. I think this could go down as one of those offensive shootouts, guys. We saw Spencer Rattler come back last week and throw really good. I believe he completed over 80% of his passes for better than 270 yards. It's the best Spencer Rattler in the passing game for OU has looked all season long. To me, at this point, Texas looks like an offensive juggernaut. I'm sure Sarkisian will find ways to dent that Oklahoma defense. They've got talented backs. I mean, Bijan Robinson, certainly the lead back in that backfield, but Rashawn Johnson has been real good as well. I'm going to say this game gets over the total. There's been plenty of times when this game, and played on the neutral site at the Cotton Bowl, has shown a lot of offensive fireworks, and I don't see why it wouldn't this year. Like I say, the only good part of either defense to me so far this season has been the Oklahoma rush defense, and I don't think that's enough to stop Texas. I think they're balanced enough, and the play calling is good enough, so I'm going to try over the number here, Oklahoma versus Texas.
All right, liking it up and over again from Robbie Veno, guys. WagerTalk.com, experts page, Rob Veno. We got Steve Merril as well. Red River Rivalry. Steve, you interested in getting involved to kick us off on Saturday?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be involved or not. I make Oklahoma -2, so I guess you could say the line's a teeny bit high, but not enough where we're necessarily making a play automatically. We look at the matchups, of course, as well, other fundamental situational things. Just a look-ahead line, by the way. DraftKings did have a bettable line on this last week before the Week 5 games were played. And the bettable look-ahead line was Oklahoma -5. It opened 3.5 in a lot of spots. Some spots briefly opened 4.5 last Sunday. Quickly came down to 3.5, where it currently stands. Pretty much 3.5 across the board. Obviously, a very key number. About 10% of the time, field goal favorites are going to win by exactly 3 in college and pro football. Rob talked about the total, and that's where it's kind of tricky for me as well. You know, normally this game would scream over, especially with Oklahoma in recent years. They've always been great offensively. Like Ohio State this year and last year, Oklahoma in many recent years, you know, they're a playoff caliber team, but they never had the defense to compete when they got to that Final Four against the powerhouse teams like Alabama, Clemson, the other teams that were strong offensively. I always felt like Oklahoma defensively was a step behind, but this year that's not been the case. They're giving up just 19 points a game, just 4.8 yards per play. You look back at that Nebraska game a few weeks ago. Nebraska, a very potent offensive team, held them to 16. I was shocked by that, and that was a real wake-up for me. Then they hold West Virginia, another dangerous team, to 13 points. Problem is they only scored 23 and 16 offensively in those two games. So they do have to step it up here. Hard to argue with the over, though. Texas is just pure offense. Not a surprise under new head coach Sarkisian. He was the offensive mastermind at Alabama, of course, in recent years. A young team, a lot of new pieces there, and they're still averaging 44 points a game, nearly 7 yards per play. So, you know, there is a little bit of line value with Texas at +3.5 or more. And I think they're probably the better offensive team. Oklahoma probably the better defensive team, which isn't something we've said in recent years. So I think this one's pretty much priced where it should be.
Yeah, no disagreeing with the over, mainly from Robbie Veno's look there. But guys, sidewise, I agree with where Steve was going with that in terms of Texas plus the 3.5. We're talking about an Oklahoma team, you know, ATS-wise against FBS competition. They haven't covered a game yet. They lost to Kansas State. Talking against the spread, yes, they won straight up. West Virginia, Nebraska, even going back to Tulane in that first game of the series, you know, they almost lost that game. They were favored by 31 points. So ATS, they have been a money burner all season long. And the Texas Longhorns, you know, say what you want about them. They've won 3 straight games, and they also beat Sunbelt Louisiana Lafayette in that week 1. So they've been a money maker. Catching the 3.5, that's the way I would look to bet Oklahoma and Texas. Next game up, 3 of 4 here. We get Michigan and Nebraska in the Big Ten. This is 6:30 Eastern kick on ABC, Steve. We're seeing the Michigan Wolverines -3.5 point road favorites, 50 being the total in Lincoln, Nebraska, Saturday night.
Yeah, once again, there was a look-ahead line on this one. Hey, take cover, Rob Vena. Okay, I'm just making sure you're all right there. This was a look-ahead line of 4.5, I believe, on this one. And now, as you said, it's pretty much settled in where we thought it would in that 3.5 range. So a little bit lower on Nebraska. And it's probably because they looked so good last week. And not a surprise to myself or my clients, actually. We had a strong best bet last Saturday night on Nebraska, minus the 10.5 to 11 against Northwestern. They beat them easily 56-7. 427 rushing yards last week. It's funny. I was reading some articles on this, especially from the Michigan side, and they're saying preparing for the option attack of Nebraska. And I laugh because Nebraska throws the ball 27 times per game for nearly 10 yards per pass. So I don't know if I exactly call that an option attack, but it's an explosive offense. They definitely can get it done. Martinez is a very dangerous quarterback. This is a definite step up for the Michigan defense that has allowed just 13 points a game and just 4.5 yards per play. Keep in mind, those opponents this year are averaging 5.2 yards per play offensively. Nebraska's averaging 6.7. Nebraska's throwing, once again, the option attack in Nebraska is averaging almost 10 yards per pass attempt. That's a first down every time they drop back down to throw the ball. Yet the total is in, just the 50.5 range. And that's a real key number. It opened 52.5. It's down to 50.5. 51, about 3 to 4% of the time games are going to land on 51. I know it's hard to make an argument for an under in a Michigan game, but they're still averaging 40 points a game this year. Nebraska averaging 32. So total looks a little low to me. Of course, I referenced that Oklahoma-Nebraska game in our last game breakdown here, and that game was only 39. So we'll see if Nebraska can move the ball against the best defense they faced, but we'll also see if Michigan can stop the best offense they faced this season in Nebraska. I side towards the Cornhuskers here. I think there's value. I think they actually can win this game outright.
Tom Osborne, that 95 Nebraska team running that option. That was fun to watch back in the day, Robbie. What are you feeling in Lincoln, Nebraska this Saturday night?
Yeah, that's a different option back then. That was a really good option. This is more RPO style. And listen, and Steve knows last Friday when we did Wager Talk today, we talked about the Nebraska Northwestern game. And, at the time, Drew, I had said that when I made the bet, Nebraska minus 11, I felt like a real gambler because betting Nebraska is, without question, up until last week, a gamble. They're so boneheaded in ways that they find the last 2 years under Scott Frost to lose games, to not cover games, penalties, drop passes, overthrown touchdown passes. They're good for all of that. And when you watch them the week prior, or even the 2 weeks prior, if we do go back to the Oklahoma game, you could almost see them like a freight train coming. And I just thought that last week was the week that they would bust out, much like Steve said he did. And they did. But, they took advantage of a Northwestern team. They ran the football down their throats. That's a team that Duke ran the football down their throats. I think Duke had over 300 yards rushing against them. Northwestern just isn't any good. So it's not Michigan. Michigan certainly will be ready. The question always, when you handicap a Nebraska game, it seems to always come down to Adrian Martinez. If he makes the plays, if he completes the passes, if he doesn't fumble the football, if he doesn't take 20-yard sacks, then they're really good. But he does all those things. And last week aside, it's very, very difficult to guarantee for 60 minutes that he won't do those things. Now, their wide receiving core was not healthy for the longest time. Samori Toure, the transfer from Montana, has been outstanding, and they got their 2 and 3 wide receivers back the last couple of weeks. So we see a little more explosiveness in the passing game. It's interesting because I know Nebraska stacks up at the line of scrimmage. They're not going to get pushed around by Nebraska. Scott Frost has taken this bully-type mentality the past month with this team, and maybe that's because that's the identity of his personnel. I wish I was getting a couple more, but I still question Michigan a little bit as being really one-dimensional. They did slice up Wisconsin last week. Jim Harbaugh did go to the passing game a little bit, because Wisconsin is so good against the run. This is a very, very tough handicap, but I'm going to go back to the total again, and I think this one will stay under. I think both defenses are the absolute best units on the field here. I don't think Michigan will get a lot done offensively against Nebraska. I don't think Nebraska will get a lot done offensively against Michigan. So it lines up like that Michigan State game against Nebraska for me, that 23-20 in overtime. I think we'll see something in that range. I'm going to play under the total.
I like it, Robbie. All right, guys, 3 games down, 1 to go. We got the last one here, my favorite one. Robbie, coming back to you. We get the Georgia Bulldogs and the Auburn Tigers, talking Deep South's oldest rivalry, Battle of Brothers. 3 hours separating Athens, Georgia, and Auburn, Alabama. We're seeing a total of 45 in Jordan-Hare. Georgia, well, you see the opening odds there, minus 14. They've been bought up to about minus 15.5 now. Looking at the WagerTalk odds screen here, Robbie, we get one of the best teams in the country, in most people's minds, number 1 or number 2 at the Auburn Tigers here. 3:30 on CBS. You liking anything? Georgia and Auburn, Robbie.
You know, what's been impressive about Auburn, Drew, has been their run defense so far this year. You know, for the past, I would say 3 years, we've always led off Auburn analysis with that defensive line, right? They've had such great defensive lines the last 3 years. And then coming into this year, that was kind of a forgotten thing. They weren't as highly touted as they have been. They've got guys scattered across the NFL now, but they've been good. Went to Penn State, shut them down almost in every situation against the run. They've been good. But after what I saw Georgia do to Arkansas last week, who had also been really good against the run, and they played Texas and they played A&M, 2 run-heavy teams, or 2 very good running teams with really good backs. And Georgia just dismantled this team. They had to go to Stetson Bennett at quarterback. Georgia did, because JT Daniels' shoulder is not really healthy at this point in time. And so the air raid turned into the run-oriented version of the air raid. I think Georgia ran the ball 65% of the time last week, and why not? The way that offensive line blew Arkansas's front 7 off the ball, I'm afraid that they can do that again here to Auburn if, in fact, Stetson Bennett has to play quarterback again. This JT Daniels injury is compared somewhat to the injury that Dak Prescott had, where Dallas just rested Dak Prescott the entire preseason, and Georgia doesn't really have that length of time to just rest JT Daniels. His arm is good one day and it's sore the next. It's going to be an ongoing situation, I guess. So we're not really sure who's going to play quarterback here. But if it's Bennett, he makes plays with his legs. Georgia's liable to go to the run game, which is Auburn's defensive strength against the run. It's a matter of who you think can win that battle. And again, after seeing what I saw out of Arkansas's defense last week, getting uprooted from the line of scrimmage, I would have to say Georgia wins that battle. Their defense, in my estimation, will cause Bo Nix no shortage of headaches. I mean, the comeback was nice last week. Again, it's LSU without their top corner, and LSU is not a top-flight defense this year. We've seen other teams push them around at the line of scrimmage. So I find it hard to play Auburn. Nice win last week. Whether or not Georgia lets down is probably your biggest issue. There was a lot riding on that game last week with their old offensive line coach, Sam Pittman, coming back to Athens for the first time. They took it pretty seriously, Georgia did, and went out and did their job. Do they have that kind of focus for this one? If they do, they cover. If they come in a little lackadaisical, Auburn's good enough to hang around within that point spread, but I wouldn't put my money there. I think I'd rather have Georgia. I think the line movement's right.
All right, looking to lay the wood with the Bulldogs in Jordan-Hare. Steve, I was going to just give a couple points on what I was looking to bet on this and get your opinion here. But talking about the Georgia side of things, their strength of schedule to date, I really don't think it's that good, especially when you look at the offenses, Steve. They played Arkansas last week. That was an early game, kind of Arkansas's, I want to say first test, but it is what it is. I think the question mark's still kind of out there with the Razorbacks. They played Vanderbilt, South Carolina, UAB, and Clemson. None of those offenses are as good as Auburn's. And I'm not saying Auburn's offense is world beaters, but we did see him wake up a little bit in LSU. Bo Nix, he made some plays. There's a little Johnny Manziel in him last Saturday night. I just wish he would go more north and south, with his running instead of east and west against Georgia. I really don't think that's going to work. And hearing Robbie allude to that, I really agree with him. But Steve, the reason I was going to suggest Auburn plus the points, more than 2 touchdowns at home, difficult place to play, is mainly because of the matchup standpoint. Robbie talked about Auburn's defensive line, and he referenced, being in the NFL a lot. I think he was going back to the 2020 year when Derek Brown and Marlon Brown were 2 of the first 40 picks out of their defensive tackles. Now they're both defensive tackles in the NFL. And there was question marks with how good this defensive front would be for Auburn. I think they've answered it. I think they're really good up front, and I think they'll be able to go toe-to-toe with Georgia. That's why I think Auburn plus more than 2 touchdowns at home is the side here. Now, as you can see, the Auburn helmet in the background, I am an alumni. I'm throwing this over to you. Is that the fan in me, man, or is this a good handicap?
Well, I think it's a little bit of the fan in you because this Georgia team is really good. I think they're the best team in the country right now. Their defense has given up only 1 offensive touchdown all season. Now, talking about the schedule strength, I know they haven't exactly played barn burners. Offensively, Clemson's turned out to be much weaker than we could have imagined after that first game. South Carolina's the only team to score more than 7 on them. Vanderbilt, Arkansas. Shutting out Arkansas was impressive, though. I mean, Arkansas was playing well coming in. But overall this season, the teams that, Georgia has played, you can only play who's on your schedule. They've averaged 5.4 yards per play. Auburn averages 6.8. So Auburn is a lot better offensively. The problem is, though, Drew, as you know, Auburn doesn't throw the ball well. 57% completions, just 6.8 yards per pass against teams that allow 7.6. Georgia gives up 4.7 yards per pass. This is one of the best pass defenses I've seen in recent years. So if Auburn gets behind, we talk about backdoor cover potential. You want a good offense. Well, Auburn 40 points a game, 7 yards a play. That seems like a good offense. The problem is they don't throw the ball well. So they really have to keep this game ugly. They have to run the ball. They have to use that rushing attack that averages almost 7 yards per carry. Georgia, great run defense, at least what we've seen so far, 70 yards a game, 2.5 yards per rush. So the chance that Auburn has is to ugly it up, keep it close, run the ball, and just hope not to get behind by double digits, too early. My power ratings on this game favor Georgia by 15, pretty much where the line opened. In fact, the look-ahead line a week ago was in that 15 to 16 range. One book opened 16. The Circa opened 16 Sunday. One of the offshores, another book opened 14 and a half. It kind of settled, and now it's gone from the 14 range back up to 16. So it's a teeny bit above my power ratings, but I'm not looking to play against Georgia, who I think is the best team in the country. Total has gone from 45 to 47, Drew. I think you can make an argument that Auburn in the under may be a little bit correlated because I don't see them winning the shootout.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, if you're like in the under, you're probably leaning towards the big underdog. And that's kind of profile of college football when it sets up this way, with a low total and more than 2 touchdowns. You could kind of not say it every single time, but it definitely is correlated under and underdog and over and favorite. So guys, final segment here, just throw it around for the most confident play. I guess I can lead us off because it's this one. I'm going with the Auburn Tigers plus the 15 here. From what I just said, plus the fact when you look at what Steve was talking about, they don't throw the ball that well, speaking towards mostly Bo Nix and the completion percentage. Sometimes, in life, in football, we've seen it where a kid gets pulled. He watches somebody else do his job, which is what happened against Georgia State. And you see him come back and actually perform as a better quarterback. I would look for that to happen here with Bo Nix going forward this season. And of course, speaking to why he got pulled against Georgia State, a Sun Belt team, they almost lost that game. It came down to a 4th and 9 play where their backup quarterback, TJ Finley, got a heck of a play, and they ended up winning the game. But going back to the Penn State game, the week before that, I really did think that was a toss-up game. And, the calls didn't really go Auburn's way. I know the announcers were concentrating, on the 3rd down, and they punted on 3rd down Penn State. But really, a lot of those questionable calls and the big plays went Penn State's way. I would have thought that it was a toss-up game, a loss for Auburn, almost made 1 loss turn into 2 against Georgia State. I bet them last week against LSU, thought it was the right side. And again, I think more than 2 touchdowns here with Auburn is my most confident play for these 4 games that we're playing. Now, granted, I haven't been that great betting Auburn. I did go to Auburn, so take it with a grain of salt, guys, but I will throw it around here. Steve Merril, sounds like you were on the other side of that, but hey, it is what it is. That's what makes a market. Any final thoughts here for the show, Steve? And where are you going for your most confident play?
Yeah, just a quick reminder. I'll actually have an in-depth preview of that game, all the top 25 matchups on Friday on WagerTalk TV here. I preview all the top 25, the biggest college football games. And once again, my power ratings favor Georgia by 15, so not sure I'll be involved. I just don't want to fade who I think is the best team in the country right now. But I do think your Auburn Tigers are catching them at a decent spot this week after the big win and having to travel. So there is hope. But there's another game on the board that we talked about this week. I had a strong best bet last Saturday night for my clients. Easy 56-7 blowout winner with Nebraska. And I once again think they're a little bit underrated. The look-ahead line for this Michigan game was 4.5 to 5 before last week. They look so good that it's now 3.5. And I think there's still value with them as I have them winning this game outright based on my power ratings. Explosive offense, Nebraska. They lost that first game against Illinois to start the season, but that was week 0. I don't acknowledge week 0. Nebraska doesn't either. They've gone 5-0 against the spread since then. And I just think the betting markets are a little bit undervaluing Nebraska once again this week. I liked them a lot last week. I think the wrong team is favored. Nebraska beats Michigan this Saturday.
Yeah, check out those videos from Steve Merril, Fade the Public of the NFL, the college football one going as well. Really good information there on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. Robbie Veno, last, certainly not least here. You can check him out on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. He does the Every Game on the Board podcast as well. Robbie, where are you going for your most confident play for the show, and any final thoughts for the listeners?
Yeah, I'll go to the Red River Rivalry, Red River Showdown. I don't know which one of those is the correct way to say it anymore. I think it's Red River Rivalry, though, at least as far as I knew. I'm going to play this one over, guys. I just don't see anyway. Right now, I talked about Spencer Rattler last week, and he took a lot of heat the first 3 weeks, especially after that Nebraska game. It was 3 consecutive weeks. They barely got by Tulane. They barely got by Nebraska. In between, they had a game where he wasn't that good. But his last 2 weeks, he's 49 of 64, 76.6% completions. All of a sudden, they're throwing the football and creating that balance that you need. And Texas's defense has proven to be extremely weak for the most part against anybody who can move the football. So I don't think Oklahoma's going to have a problem scoring their points here. Where they might have a problem is, although their run defense has been real good, they haven't seen Texas yet. This team runs the football. And as I mentioned, these 2 kids at tailback are home run threats every time they touch the football. Bijan Robinson is an NFL player for sure. And Steve Sarkisian's play calling. Casey Thompson, the quarterback here, just goes out there and scores points for that team. I think they'll score on Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma will score on Texas. Back and forth we go, weather permitting here, because sometimes – in this game is scheduled the same week every single year. There's been times where weather hasn't been good, but weather permitting, I don't see any reason why this game doesn't get over 63 points. So give me over the total, Texas-Oklahoma.
I like it, Robbie. Good stuff from Robbie Veno, WagerTalk.com, and that over. Guys, that does it for the show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks to this chat box for joining us live here. And if you're watching on replay, please drop a line below with what you're looking to bet, where you agree with us, where you disagree with us. It's all welcome. Please smash that like button on your way out. For Steve Merril, Rob Veno, I am Drew Martin. Best of luck with your bets, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Why pay regular price when you can save money on every purchase with WagerBucks at both WagerTalk and Sports Memo? WagerBucks are now eligible for use on not just daily, 3-day, and 7-day passes, but all long-term and seasonal packages up to 1 full year. There are tons of options available for every budget and size of bettor, from as low as $90 gets $100, all the way up to $3,500 gets you $5,000. Save every day on every pick you buy with WagerBucks.